Hey guys, before we begin this video, I just wanted to give a shout out to Thomas Fan 1945 for bringing back the 90s deep dub music for season 1 and 2 of Sailor Moon. Those have been recently unarchived by him, as well as the assistance of Bob Summers, who's been involved with the show, to my knowledge. These two have been great in bringing back the classic music, and I want to just say that I recommend you check out the video that they've made on YouTube not too long ago. The link will be in the description, obviously. Honestly, the music is pretty good, and although it does capture the same sort of retakes on Moonlight Legend, the Japanese theme song, it's pretty nice that they were able to give it a bit of identity, kind of like the way a lot of cartoons did back then when they reused bits of the theme song for their background music. But yeah, I recommend checking it out, and if you do, be sure to give a like, comment, and possibly subscribe to their stuff, because they like to restore all the classic stuff that was from the series, and they're great at it too. So yeah, definitely check it out. And now on to the video. Welcome to another episode of the JustUs Podcast. For now, it'll just be Tobs and I again, the dynamic duo, as we delve into this new episode.
So, what are the topics today?
Alright. These topics include the 1986 Transformers movie, since it turns 35 this year, Season 1 of Sailor Moon, the 90s dub, from Deke Entertainment, Free Guy, the recently released movie, and the classic Batman series with Adam West.
Damn.
As always, let's go from left to right on the thumbnail with Transformers, the movie. Now, I think you guys already know for a fact that this topic has been one of the main subject matters on my channel, if not the main subject matter. It's always Transformers. It's always a little stop motion, or a little meme video, or commentary on something. It's part of my DNA at this point, and for good reason.
It represents your essence, and I think we have mentioned a lot of times this Transformers movie, but we haven't gone in depth any time.
Now, it's not to be confused with the Michael Bay film that came out in 2007. Now, that one I want to save for next year and compare and contrast to The Last Night, because if there is going to be a comparison, then you got to compare one of the best with one of the worst. But until then, 86. So, G1 has been kind of a series that of late has been either getting a lot of love from 80s fans and people that are interested in learning about the past, or from clout seekers, especially those like IGN and all the fake fans that try to pretend they know about cinema. Bird app. Or it might get some infamy from people that are tired of it, that want to see new directions in the franchise, and overall just want to move away from it because they want to enjoy what hasn't been represented as much, like Beast Wars and the Unicron Trilogy.
Yeah.
But that being said, reviewing the 1986 Transformers movie, after watching the War for Cybertron trilogy, and the same goes for the G1 cartoon, I'm not going to act like I'm a super big fan of the movie. My appreciation for it has grown immensely after watching the devastating mess that was the War for Cybertron trilogy.
That's so funny, because usually we don't appreciate what is good until we get something worse.
Yep. But in this case, my journey with the 86 movie has varied from being super duper obsessed with learning about the past of the Transformers, to then getting annoyed by the overabundance of G1, to then having some appreciation for it as time went along. Because it's not a perfect series. And I know for a fact that there's some people that are pretty like going to be upset when I say that I have my own opinions on G1, but I'd take G1 over the War for Cybertron trilogy any day. The series specifically.
Yeah.
Now, I think a little bit of a commentary on the G1 cartoon is necessary. It was the first that came out in the 1980s. It has all these characters. In fact, I think it had too many characters. In a time period where a Transformers series usually has like 5 characters for the main Autobots and then a few more for the Decepticons as it grows more and more over time, Generation 1 began with 18 Autobots.
Yeah, that's a lot compared to other movies or shows from Transformers.
Yep. Which was kind of like neat that was a thing they did back then, but it was kind of a problem because some of them were reuses of character designs like Prowl and Bluestreak, Ironhide, and Ratchet. And it got even
Yeah.
worse in season 2 when you had a mix of characters with unique body designs or reuses of previous ones that try to look more like the toys. Now, I appreciate the fact that they're robots who can look distinct in terms of deco, but it gets even more annoying when you have repeated character traits. Like Red Alert is a fire department themed sideswipe, but he's paranoid. And in the Sonicons, they have Breakdown, who looks like a Lamborghini, but he's white. But instead of having mostly red accents, he has blue accents, and he's a paranoid guy too. Yeah, it's kind
But
of funny how it works.
that thing of characters looking too much alike, I think that was very common in the animation from the 80s. Like that was commonly a thing.
Yeah, I think at the time it was mostly like a quantity over a quality thing that Hasbro had back then.
Yeah.
Which,
Besides, it was like the introduction of this, uh, like this concept.
yep,
So they wanted to go all in, probably.
pretty much, yeah. Especially when they were reusing old toys from a different franchise like Diaclone and Microchange. That changed a
Hmm.
bit, however, in the 1986 movie when they mostly wanted to kill off old product and replace it with new product. And yeah, I think if you've seen all these articles from either fans that are just obsessed with the 80s or from people that are super obsessed with trying to make all these articles that try to sound super dramatic when they're like, top 10 dark facts about your childhood, or top 100 Transformers facts you totally didn't know about, even though the wiki exists, or even top 9 reasons why I'm locked out of my house, then you probably know for a fact that a lot of characters in the movie died.
Yeah, that's dramatic.
Very dramatic.
I remember the like the famous picture of, I don't know which Autobot, but he's laying down in a metallic bed or something, dying.
That was Optimus, probably.
Oh,
Because,
really?
yeah, that scene has been stuck in the minds of 80s kids because they weren't used to their character dying. But there's a reason why, as we mentioned, Hasbro was trying to make it a marketing thing. They wanted to get eyes on the movie by killing off characters that were like meant to be old product and replace it with new product. They sell toys, but they had no idea that people would be so attached to these characters.
Maybe they weren't fully aware of what they generated.
Yeah, like when you look at Transformers nowadays, like you pretty much expect Optimus and Bumblebee, Megatron, and Starscream to show up because like they're the main 4 characters in the series, especially since 2007. Like
Hmm.
Beast Wars was pretty much like was like its own spin-off. Robots in Disguise was a reboot, the first reboot, and well, although the Unicron trilogy did have Hotshot, it wasn't until the first movie where Bumblebee was made as a main character again. Like he was there in G1, but he wasn't the like one of the main faces of the franchise as he is today.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
Yeah, I
the
don't.
Yeah.
Honestly, I never understood that well. Where does the charm for Bumblebee come from? Like, when did it all started, more or less? Because was it from the Michael Bay's movies, or that character kind of had more of a spotlight before?
Well, he had a bit of spotlight in G1. Like he stuck around a bit in season 3, even though most of the old characters were replaced or killed. He got rebuilt into Goldbug. He was given a new Pretender body in the Marvel comics, which are a different continuity from the cartoon. He had an Action Master figure. He was repainted in Generation 2, and he has popped up in some of the niche comic books, like from 3H or Dreamwave, before the character appeared in the movies. Although that's in contrast to the cartoons at the time, because Bumblebee was nowhere to be seen in Robots in Disguise or the Unicron trilogy.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Oh, it's cool.
all this about the characters having main prominence. That's in response to what happened in the movie, because Prowl died, Ironhide and Ratchet died, Brawn died, Optimus died, like a lot of Autobots died, and right off the bat, like normally that'd be kind of dramatic, but the problem is that its execution is kind of laughable. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. In the cartoons, they generally survived getting shot. Sure, they'd moan in pain, or they'd like sort of limp, but they turn out okay. What happened? Nobody knows.
so what you're saying is that they made it like more vulnerable in the movies than in the show.
In the movie specifically, they were much more vulnerable. And
Mm.
it's strange because, like, if the Decepticons upgraded their weapons, I'd buy it. Or how about the Autobots were clearly depleted in energy sources? I'd buy that too. Hell, there's one line that sticks out of my mind where Optimus Prime says, "All we need is a little energon and a lot of luck." That made me wonder, did they donate the energon sources they had to him because he was the strongest?
I don't know. Don't ask me.
Yeah,
Go and debate with your
I would,
fandom.
but they're gonna be like, "Why don't you like? Don't you understand? This is a movie. It's meant for us. You're a Michael Bay shill. Like, no, I'm not. I'm a Transformers enjoyer overall. Like, I have so many like versions of the characters. I love a lot of the series. I'm just asking genuine questions. I do the same thing too for other stuff. Like, where did Bumblebee get his ability to put himself back together after being blown up in the last night? Like, where did that come from? Was that because he was inspired by Stinger? Or how about this? What's Cyclonus's intent on framing all the Autobots in RD 2015? Well, we're getting off track, but you know what I mean.
State an opinion.
Yeah,
I think people are more critical with the new, like, modern Transformers because, well, it's more mainstream. But back then, I bet it had the same incongruences and, like, let's say, inconsistencies that it has today.
yeah. But I think there are some people that I can generally buy his opinions on, or like agree with them, or see their point of view if they have like more varied tastes. Like some of the average comments would probably just be me going like by the same way I'd probably like groan if someone's like, "Oh my God, Tommy's the best. Nothing beats the originals," and I'm like, they replaced their Zords 3 times in a row. They literally had to like have Tommy Oliver scream and paint about his powers. But that's a story for another day, maybe 2 years from here.
That's a lot of time on that. Okay.
But yeah, the characters getting killed off is like not a bad idea, but the execution is kind of like confusing. Like obviously kids in the 80s were traumatized as hell, but me as someone that's like even if I was a kid in the 80s, I probably wonder like what happened, because that itself wouldn't make any sense now, would it?
Sorry, I think my internet died. 1 second.
That's very unusual.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
as,
keep going.
that's about as confusing as the explanation of the lack of context behind the '86 movie deaths. But like aside from that, another problem I do have is Unicron's backstory. He just shows up. I mean, it's great that we see him as a threat. He eats up a planet, a lithium, in the beginning of the movie, which which like basically confirms his status as a massive threat. He's just planet eater. He will cause mayhem, and he's going to main business, especially when he meets Megatron. It turns into Galvatron. But the problem is though, we have no backstory on him. Now you can make backstories for characters after the main media and hype it up, kind of like how Star Wars: The Clone Wars, although on a different scale from this, is kind of like the perfect way to add on to your movies.
Hmm.
The
So
problem
yeah,
though,
the big bad didn't have a backstory.
yeah, the problem though is that the backstory we got in the cartoon is stupid.
Oh,
Literally,
okay.
he's been made by the space monkey that looks like he belongs in Care Bear series or whatever, and uh, and he's basically this machine that was made, and the experiment gone wrong. So that's a big slap in the face. That's like Ryan Johnson levels of bad.
I mean, it would be cool if we were talking about Doctor Manhattan, but this time it does not because Space Monkey.
Well, Monkey is great. Embrace Monkey. Unfortunately, this monkey did one bad thing, that being make a disappointing backstory on Unicron.
Uh,
It's especially sucky too because it's even worse by the fact that that other versions of the stories depict Unicron and Primus as like brothers. They had opposing views from one another. Primus believed in peace. Unicron believed in power. They had conflict. Primus created the 13 or the 7 in some universes, and they made a massive war that got Unicron away. That's great. Here, sure, the lore was just beginning and whatnot, but you kind of admit, looking back, it definitely shows just how uh, trippy the G1 writers were in season 3.
yeah, and also maybe in those times they weren't as professional as now. Let's say
Yeah.
they didn't get too well paid, so maybe that wasn't very motivational.
Although we'll say in the defense of some writers like Bob Budiansky and Simon Furman, they knew how to make the stories work, especially when it came to doing stuff like the more believable origin story. The Marvel comics aren't 100% perfect in some instances, but I will admit that when they make a great story, they know how to make a great story overall. And I
Yeah, and
think
it sticks around.
and I think the backstory with Unicron and Primus, even though it was exclusive in the UK comics, definitely deserved all the attention it got from Hasbro in these recent incarnations. Sorry, Space Monkey, you should have gone that banana. But yeah, that's another negative issue I have. Um, but beyond that, well, okay, another nitpick. This is more of a nitpick, but the time jump between 1985 and 2005. A lot of times they do that, and understandably, it's to make the film more futuristic and high tech, but you don't really get that much of an impact on the change in the world beyond just, oh, everything's like kind of futuristic now, even though, well, we can't fault them for getting 2005 wrong, can we?
Yeah, I don't like that either. Big ellipses are annoying unless like you want to actually tell one story from one perspective and like be faithful to it. But otherwise, it's kind of annoying.
Either way, that's more of a nitpick than an actual complaint. I mean, no one expected a car that looks like Hot Rod or Cup, did we?
I don't think so.
Imagine that. It's kind of funny when you look at back at the future in the 1980s and then compare it to the actual like present day. Definitely a major contrast, but hey, at least they were more creative. Whereas the rest of the world looks like it's about the same. Maybe not as colorful as it is back then, but hey, your mileage may vary, I guess.
Yeah.
And one more complaint I have about the movie itself is the overall. Uh, I don't know how to word this properly. Maybe a better word would be like it's kind of hard to choose the right word because like I was thinking about getting into the positives, but now I'm kind of stuck. I think probably the best word would pretty much be um, instances where you feel like there should have been something added there. Like you look at some instances of like parts of a movie and you feel like something's missing at times. Like
Yeah.
minor stuff like Dinobot, Snarl, he's missing in the movie somehow.
It feels like there's a hole, but you're not sure where or why.
Yeah. Or in this case, we kind of know why, but we know what happened, but we don't know why they're not there. Or hell, Bruticus and Menasor aren't present in the battle for Autobot City. Only Devastator was. And like an example of how Transformers, especially in the '80s, try to like hype up new toys by making their old ones seem inferior. Devastator went from a massive threat to getting kind of like a wimp when the other combiner showed up, even though he's like kind of taller than him and had like six members instead of five. But in the movie, he's back to being very threatening.
Hmm.
Yeah, like sure we can all agree that the line "prepare for extermination's" iconic, but that's only because there's no one else that gets his spotlight.
So you're saying that one merit from the movie could have been like even better if it was reflected on another character or thing?
All I'm saying is that it feels like some things are missing in the movie at times. I mean,
Hmm.
this was definitely a time period where they rushed out to meet the demands of a balding CEO from Hasbro in the 1980s, who were like, "Damn it, we need to get this movie out there. The kiddies need to get their toys out. Come on, hurry, 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 hurry."
Yeah, that's how money works and a capitalistic world works. So
Yeah, pretty
let's do
much.
it.
But it's especially true in that sort of time period because like Hasbro is pretty much less about like keeping characters around and more so just making toys and money. Like they still do that today, but not to the same extent they did back then, which is why we have an emphasis on keeping a main cast.
Hmm. Yeah.
And another example would probably be like we already know for a fact that the battle between Optimus and Megatron's iconic, but there's always one thing that confused me was when he was saying that's a question you should ask yourself. What's with the zoom in before he gets back on his feet? Apparently, that's from Blitzwing trying to tackle him, especially when at one point he was shown like shooting Decepticons. Then he didn't have his gun anywhere, and it just shows up in another scene when he picks it up to shoot Megatron once and for all.
Okay, that kind of gets me a bit lost, but I get it. I
It's it's just kind of one of those things about it's consistency that's not quite present. It's kind of like how the last night goes from the black bars on the top and the bottom to no black bars and back and forth.
ah, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, except whereas the problem with that was that it got annoying because it doesn't know what to stick with. Here, the problem is that it just makes you wonder, like, wait, why did we get through that scene, or where did his gun go?
Okay.
All right, negatives over. Time to get into positives, especially regarding why I wanted to make this like segment for the video. The animation is gorgeous. Hot mama.
Yeah.
Like G1 was already a decent looking cartoon, but the 86 movie is beautiful.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. This was animated by Toei back then. Same who made another topic we'll talk about in a bit. But like the '86 movie has just been very, very good overall in terms of animation. Like it's very fluid, it's very vibrant, it's very sharp. And my favorite thing about it is the fact that it knows how to make your characters like better animated overall. On top of that, the like it doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like it's been compromised. The character models are very consistent too. Nowhere near as like either in different sort of proportions or design traits as the seasons 1 and 2. Like if you were to compare the character models, you have different animation styles at times. Like not necessarily entirely different, but sometimes you look at Optimus Prime's head in some episodes and his head looks rounded. Whereas another time it looks, hey, calm yourself, buddy. Calm yourself, Lucas. He's trying to get us because trying to criticize G1. Lucas is a G1er confirmed. Lucas is a G1er confirmed.
Oh no.
But yeah.
A fanboy.
Yeah. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is
fan.
yeah, he's way too much of a big G1 fan. Even though he's just a little baby doggy that's been born in 2015. Fun. But yeah.
He's very young.
But yeah, like the animation in G1 either had different character models. Like I know that was common back then for animators to have different like animators. I mean, you either have one guy do some episodes and then have another guy do another few, and it varies. Like sometimes it either looks very nice and sharp, or it kind of looks kind of simple. In the case of Generation 1, you either had more detailed models or less detailed models. Hell, sometimes you either have Optimus Prime's head looking kind of blocky, or sometimes it looks kind of rounded, but still keeping the main details intact. That's not to be confused when they change character model designs. Like when Grimlock had a head that looked a little chubby and rounded like Bumblebee's to being more rigid and aggressive like it normally is. Or Devastator when he looked like he had like his face on a mountain to having a visor and having a more distinct yet blocky head.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Here in the '86 movie, it's all consistency. They even fixed up any of the little weird things that popped up from the pre-production stuff, like in the pre-production of the movie, Ultra Magnus was kind of weirdly uh, red and blue, kind of like Optimus, but not exactly, to having his more proper colors that he's known for. Red, white, and blue, basically.
So it actually feels like a product that's quality is consistent this time.
Yeah, in terms of animation. And another thing that's quality, voice acting. Like the voice acting in Generation 1 is actually pretty good.
Okay, that's cool too.
Yeah. Like even in some of the worst of Transformers, well, apart from the War for Cybertron trilogy and Prime Wars, the voice acting is one of the stronger aspects because they give the characters identity.
I mean, yeah, and I think that was even a more vital thing back then because they couldn't access to plenty of animation techniques to evoke expressions, and now they can. And well, voice acting was fundamental.
Yeah. But in this case, the voice acting was just as good, if not better, than in G1. Like, you already had your mainstays like Peter Cullen, Frank Welker, Chris Latta, Dan Gilvesen, Corey Burton, and so on and so forth. Then you have new voice actors that were brought in for the movie, like Leonard Nimoy, Robert Stack, Judd Nelson, Susan Blue, and Orson Welles. Some of these are big names and are kind of in a time period where movie producers were more about getting the publicity instead of like focusing on the movie itself. Kind of like how, and I hate to say this, kind of like how you look at the '90s Batman movies, and they're mostly focusing on like getting the publicity of the actors to the older audiences, like Jim Carrey or Arnold Schwarzenegger, instead of being like obsessed over making a good movie, which was clearly the case for Batman and Robin. And you compare that to the way comic book movies are made nowadays, like with being mostly either about new product for a new cinematic universe or whatever DC's doing with Hamadaverse, or every once in a while you get something that's about like the product itself, and it just so happens to have these actors, like the first X-Men movie, the Raimi trilogy, MCU back then, when it was more than just a commercial for the next movie, and some of the Snyder stuff.
Yeah, I'm still scared because maybe you summon that mysterious figure by saying Batman and Robin. I'm scared.
Well, let's move on. But yeah, the voice acting, sure, they brought a lot of like main talents to get publicity from the parents because they probably would be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna watch this movie. I'm just gonna bring my kids along, but I don't care. It's like loud, like kiddie stuff." But then they go, like they do their soy face when they see, or 80s style soy face when they see Leonard Nimoy and whatnot. This is not a jab, by the way. I like the voices that they did. I love the performance of Leonard Nimoy's Galvatron, Orson Welles' Unicron, so on and so forth. Although ironically, Orson Welles was known for criticizing his involvement with the '86 movie. Maybe he was, maybe he hasn't, but apparently there's like a interview before he died where he says that he voiced the role of a toy that blew himself up because of some dumb reason, and that's kind of confusing because people say he hated being in the movie or he liked being in the role. We don't know, and we're not going to get any proper answers because the media is more obsessed about bitching about like old beef between Michael Bay and Megan Fox that they already resolved.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sad, but voice acting is still great. Another thing I love is the fact that the music is just top notch. Generation One's music is perfectly fine. I mean, it does the typical thing where it kind of uses the same iconic beats of the theme song, but the '86 movie is just so good when it comes to its instrumentals. Like Sam Bush when it comes to Dare, The Touch, um, Dare to Be Stupid by legendary Weird Al Yankovic, Instruments of Destruction by someone whose like band name I'm forgetting. Like those are great insert themes. But another thing I like is the background music, like from the Battle of Autobot City, or when Optimus Prime was dying. It's so good. It's well done, and it adds a lot of atmosphere into the mix.
Cool.
Yeah, like obviously it's different. It's a different tier from like John Steve Jablonsky, but it's meant to be. This is a cartoon movie. Steve Jablonsky is Hollywood. Well, the good of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And the way it's all done is like so good, and I wouldn't mind getting like the album at some point because believe it or not we do actually have a record player downstairs.
The vinyl?
Yep, how we obtained one is beyond me, but
Wow.
it still works. It's great. I like using it at times with my old cassettes.
Dude, you should really buy something and play it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I should. And one more positive thing I like is the fact that in retrospective I like the story of it. Like, sure, it kind of copied and pasted Star Wars, but at least it does have a bit of soul in some ways. Basically, it's got similar premises of a young protagonist that reaches into higher goals to become the main hero, and with a group of ragtag heroes alongside him, and he gets everything in the end, victory and whatnot. And as much as I kind of find the Star Wars similarities kind of obvious, at least it knows that well with that sort of aspect when they say that it was conceived by an epic tradition of Star Wars. So pretty much they were clearly inspired by that.
I would let it pass. I don't really care.
And letting it pass too, because at least they knew how to make something that was entertaining. Which leads to my next point. This movie is actually fun to watch. Like, even though I much prefer the more recent stuff because it feels more polished in terms of writing and whatnot, this movie is still like fun to watch overall. Like, I guess you could say Generation One's kind of like eating like a sugary cereal that might be bad for your teeth, but every once in a while it's okay to see it. You know, especially the '86 movie where it feels the most engaging because of the great aforementioned stuff like the animation as well as the voice acting and the pacing of it too. It's pretty crazy to see us go from massive wars to a battle with Optimus and Megatron to the interrogation with Unicron and Megatron and going and then everyone invading everything at Autobot City, then them going to space, then splitting up at places like Junkion and the uh, prisons that have the Pit of Judgment with the Quintessence, to then preparing to go up against Unicron.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty good.
it has the rewatchable element, and I think that for classics that is very important because maybe you don't want to watch them because they grew old. But if it has that element, it means everything.
Yeah, like it's not as rewatchable to me as the first Transformers movie or or even like most of the original trilogy. I'd say it's equal in terms of rewatchability as Age of Extinction, because while they're both fun to watch, I do have some issues with each of them. Like Age of Extinction's issues with me are different from the issues I have with '86. But
Um,
either way, they're still fun films to watch, and '86 is definitely one to like pop every once in a while, especially now that I have it downloaded.
so
Yeah, I was rewatching it not too long ago, and it's great to see it, especially in higher quality, because I'm so used to watching either the TV airing from Hub Network back then in 2014, as well as the sort of crummy quality clips that were on YouTube back then, and
yeah, they usually look hideous.
and a stop motion recreations of him by one guy that used to be active, and he made stuff
Oh,
like
cool.
yeah, he used to do like these stop motions with like custom figures, the masterpieces of Optimus and Megatron, and he made his own dioramas. Like it's so good. It's all fun.
Nice.
And now to the last aspect of the movie. The reason why I wanted to bring it in is not just because it turned 35 years old, but because I have a new appreciation for it. Compare this, or compare my comments on this series to, or this movie to War for Cybertron Trilogy.
Yeah, it is vastly better.
Yeah, and keep in mind that I did not grow up with the '86 movie, and my history with G1 has been very sparse before the 2010s came along, where I learned more about it, and over time started to collect the toys, watch the show, read the comics. So you might be thinking, wait, you can't judge G1. You're a new fan. But that doesn't stop me because I've seen G1 and I've seen the War for Cybertron trilogy. One is clearly better than the other in terms of how it represents itself.
Yeah, you don't usually criticize out of nothing. It's like, in fact, here you actually watched both sides, let's say. So,
Yeah, and G1's movie wins hands down because its voice acting is so much better. Its animation is so gorgeous. Its context is done up quite well, even if it is kind of incomplete. And some things that are added onto it are kind of laughable, like the monkey that made Unicron. But at the end of the day, it managed to be better handled because the people, even if they were more about making money, at least knew how to make something that was entertaining and well polished in terms of voice acting and animation. Compare
yeah,
that to Kingdom. which suffers from weak animation. Even though it's CGI, I don't care if it's CGI. Like it's as long as if it's good, and I'll be happy. But it's inferior to what we got in the past with Prime. Weaker, like stiffer camera movement, terrible animation that tries to be so toy accurate, lousy voice acting that tries to make everyone sound like a tough guy without any distinction, a tone that makes me wonder why people would simp this, but then bash stuff like the Star Wars prequel, specifically Revenge of the Sith, or Batman v Superman, or even the Clone Wars by saying, "Oh, it's just a kids show."
Yeah, no, I don't get that. I don't get that elitism.
Yeah, but the more important thing is the fact that it's a reminder as to what happens when you try to make something that's made specifically for a group of fans.
Hmm.
Like the War for
Yeah.
Cybertron trilogy is meant to be like this sort of like, gimmick of G1 but dark and gritty, which in itself wouldn't be a bad thing, even if it made me roll my eyes. And I did roll my eyes when I first got that announcement. But the trailers themselves made it promising, where it made me think, oh, maybe they're going to make it different from the Prime Wars trilogy, which sucked. Nope, obviously not.
Nope.
And it's especially insulting too because like Prime Wars was bad in different ways than the War for Cybertron trilogy. One was very stilted and trying to make itself look like it was on par with stuff like the quality of RWBY or something else like that. I don't know. I don't watch most of that stuff, unfortunately. But it tries to make itself seem like this epic thing, like the Game of Thrones of animation, but it fails because it's all about just using words. It tells, but it doesn't show.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with Kingdom, but at least the '86 movie didn't go for that route and instead just made itself as, oh, here's a movie based on the TV show. It's and it kind of made me feel bad for talking shit about G1 back then because I remember like being kind of against it, saying, "Oh, like the cartoon is like overrated. The movie itself is laughably like painful to watch." But this rewatch made me realize that maybe I was just harsh at it for the wrong reasons. It's not the quality that's the issue, but it's mainly the fatigue, the fact people hype it up. And even though I don't exactly like it, there are things I do like and even love, I'd say.
That here, when we basically grow up, our minds develop in different places. And also, it is a bit of a generational encounter. So maybe that's why all that problem.
I guess you could say that. But overall, the 1986 movie is, well, not on my top 10 pieces of Transformers media. It's still up there in the honorable mentions. It has some issues to it, but that doesn't stop it from being a damn fun thing to watch. Especially now that I'm getting myself all the Studio Series 86 figures and the Kingdom guys. Like, I almost want to recreate scenes from the movie in stop motion, since they're fun to animate from what I've seen with other people's takes on them. And I kind of want to do the same thing for the live action movies with the Studio Series.
Huh.
Yeah, like when something's engaging, like the '86 movie or Prime or most of the movies from Michael Bay or animated and even Cyberverse, it makes you want to like delve into those more and more. And funny enough, G1, the cartoon, the comics from Marvel, and all that like made me want to buy the War for Cybertron toys, not the cartoon itself, because A, the toys were already out in 2019, the show came out in 2020. B, I was interested in collecting G1 characters to go along with the movie guys. And C, fuck the Netflix show anyhow.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna end it off by saying that I much prefer when they try to make something that's kind of like, even if it's not 100% perfect, at least feels enjoyable. That's something that feels like it's written by someone that wants to belittle Transformers fans. Uh, War for Cybertron Trilogy. Good toy line, stupid show.
I hope we never talk about that again.
Maybe for some comparisons, but yeah, let's move on. Next up, we're going to be talking about something that actually saved me from 2020. That was not WFC nor Beast Morphers, that being Sailor Moon, surprisingly.
Ooh,
Yeah, you didn't
you're a
expect this
weeb.
topic to move on from the podcast after the Eternal review, did you?
No, I did not. I actually thought that maybe it was like a tiny passion you suddenly had, but apparently you're digging it. Like you're really liking it.
Yeah, that's kind of a surprising thing, too, because I thought to myself, this is kind of like an interesting subject matter or franchise. It definitely is different from what I'm used to with all the things I like. But the more I saw it from with some friends on Twitter and Instagram, the more I thought to myself, this is actually kind of fun. I would give it a shot, and I have. In fact, after this, I'm going to live stream the next few episodes of season 1 to some friends.
Oh,
Yep.
are we
So,
the friends? No, we're not.
well, you're not in the server that I'm in. It would be cool to invite you,
No.
but it's all to you.
Well, maybe.
But back to the
I
topic.
can.
Yeah, this show is pretty much specifically we'll be talking about the American dub. I probably might review the Japanese version or the V's dub at some point, but spoiler alert, I kind of like the 90s dub a bit more just because of its personality. But first, let's go over the story. Basically, a long time ago, in a galaxy that we pretty much live in, there was a moon kingdom run by Queen Serenity. She was keeping everything in peace until Queen Beryl ruined everything with the Negaverse. And everyone died on the Moon Kingdom after a battle between the good and evil. The evil was pretty much sent to Earth in the crystals, and everyone that died on the Moon Kingdom was resurrected into a future that took place in the 90s.
Tonight.
Yep. And let me tell you that a lot of stuff that we've covered in the past that was put in the 90s doesn't scream 90s as much as Sailor Moon does. Well, at least the 90s dub did. But we'll get into why in a moment. Story wise, it's actually not too shabby. It's typical everyday like slice of life with like the young characters before trouble happens and they have to turn into superheroes. Kind of like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers around the same time, or just Power Rangers in general. Although it kind of varies from series to series. I mean, you either have high school stuff like Mighty Morphin and Dino Thunder, or like not like normal lives for people like Mystic Force, or big boy business like Time Force and SPD.
Yeah.
But pretty much, at one point, our titular character found a cat named Luna that tells her that she's looking for the Moon Princess, and at some point she realizes that perhaps she may be, she might not be. So she tells her to turn into Sailor Moon, and after taking out a bad guy, although at the cost of making herself look like a crybaby in front of the villains, well, she did actually use like those red things on her hair when she's into her hero form or scout form or whatever. Like those actually were like glowing red and making shock waves or sound waves when she was crying out loud.
Yeah, you told me she's kind of a crybaby.
Yeah, and I'm getting bad memories of when I kept on losing to Soundwave and Forged to Fight because every once in a while he used like a Soundwave attack with Laserbeak in the game. I'm like, no, don't remind me of that shit. But it was fun to watch. And from there, we got into more bits of slices of life before we got more characters. But let's talk about the rest of the story. More scouts showed up, some villains got taken down. One of them was named Jedi, who looked like Luke Skywalker if he was a cartoon character or an anime character that was in the Empire.
Weird. Is it a
Yep.
coincidence?
Yeah. And he also sounded like Shadow the Hedgehog, but nowhere near as clumsy or edgy as Shadow in some fictions. Well, I say clumsy, but you know what I mean in terms of how he's written.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, um, like more villains show up. Like we got Nephrite, who pretty much has this. I was only has to deal with this like girl that had a crush on him when he's disguised as Maxfield Stanton. He gets killed. Then we get Stoyside, who's pretty much sort of like a femme fatale of sorts, before she gets replaced by her love, that being Malachite, who looks like
Uh,
a one-winged angel without the wings, so no-wing angel.
okay, very weird but fun concepts.
Yep. And after like the typical fights against the monsters of the week and the flights of life and the cleanliness and the genuine like touching moments, that's pretty much season one. Now let's go over the characters. I'm going to be using the American name since this is a '90s dub after all. Your main protagonist is Serena, who, as we described earlier, is a clumsy crybaby. Like she has
Yeah,
positive moments to her. Don't let the those aesthetic mood posts where she's all depressed and crying and like deceive you. She's kind of a happy-go-lucky character if things go well. Which
that's cool.
yeah, like she's shown to be happy when she's eating food or when she's hanging out with her friends. I mean, they definitely like the post definitely did her character a disservice. I'm like, oh god, they're gonna make her like this. Are they like no? Like she's clumsy, but she's still fun to watch. She's nowhere near as miserable as a lot of the aesthetic posts do. They made her look like a piece of shit in terms of like behavior, with those stuff like I just want to sleep or whatnot. Like
Yeah, so you could say like she isn't reduced to one trait of her personality. She has a lot of things to
yeah,
either not like or like.
yeah, she's very animated basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's especially great to see her character grow. I mean, she still has her like cowardly moments, but she also has her brave moments. And it's kind of like nice to see her stand on her ground, whether it's from a roll call or when she's about to finish off a monster. There's stock footage for both instances.
hmm.
Then you have Amy Anderson, who's pretty much uh, like like the brain of the group. She's definitely like the more quiet of the group, but she's still very sweet and fun to watch when she's like fighting evil. She knows how to use
Huh.
a computer. She's pretty much able to uh, show that she's more than just a genius. Like she's smart, but she's not a dork. She's still acts like a genuine person at times.
Yeah,
Yeah. Plus, a lot of people pretty much like her character a lot. They say that she's the best scout in the series. And there's one guy whose video I uploaded on my channel that's pretty much shows him as the biggest fan of Sailor Mercury.
oh boy.
Yeah, that was in the 2000s, by the way, which was kind of a rare thing for anime fans to be like outright proud of their interest.
Oh no, and they were very ashamed. No, I'm kidding.
No,
But
they actually had a little room devoted to her with posters and bits of merchandise here and there. And he ran a fan site about it. But
yeah, I mean the people back then were a minority compared to today, and well, they were big fans, like
yep,
big fans.
massive fans, in fact.
Yeah.
Yep. But that's not a big issue because in this case, Amy slash Sailor Mercury is actually pretty cool. Then we go to Ray, aka Sailor Mars, and she's pretty much like the aggressive one of the team. Like she tends to argue with people at times. She's kind of like hot headed. She and Serena pretty much argue with each other from time to time. Think of it as kind of like a bit of a SpongeBob Squidward dichotomy of sorts. But instead of being neighbors, they're just on the same team and they know how to get their argument over with when they have to fight evil.
That's positive.
Yeah. At times they still act like kind of like sisters or they act kind of annoying towards one another, which I'll get
Hmm.
to one moment where I kind of got on my nerves. But at the very least, her character was still great. I mean, she didn't really get on my nerves overall, apart from one episode. and it was great to see her interact with the other characters and grow to being less of well, I don't want to use any degrading words. I'm just going to say less irritating or irritated overall. And then you have Lita, aka Sailor Jupiter, and she's pretty much kind of like the tall, strong girl. In her debut episode alone, she's been able to save Serena from a group of gangsters simply by pushing them aside and throwing them around. Like, she's kind of a strong person overall, and I'm quite happy with how she stood her ground in the first episode. She's no damsel in distress, that's for sure.
Okay, well, that's cool. I like those characters.
Yep, and it's also great that we get to see her like maintain those attributes, even if she's kind of got her typical girly moments, like her like being boy crazy. I mean, every once in a while, she definitely say, "Oh, that reminds me of my ex-boyfriend, Freddie."
Oh no!
Everything,
Oh no! No!
yeah, everything she looks at a hot like a guy that's attractive to her. Like first, it was Game Machine Joe. You can ask who this Joe is, but because the characters in that universe won't get the joke, we know.
Joke who?
and Andrew, who's a side character. But Jupiter is definitely great. She might be like initially I was thinking she'd be the one to kind of have beef with Serena, but no, that's actually Ray, which kind of surprised me. Then you have Sailor Venus, aka Mina, and she's not really that developed of a character. Apparently, she's said to be kind of the goofiest of them all, especially in the later seasons. But in this one, she's kind of normal. Like she has mysterious attributes. Like she's the most athletic of them all. She's the most mysterious in terms of her backstory because apparently at one point in her life she was Sailor V, but they didn't really go into that detail that much in this dub. And she doesn't really share much of her like goofiest moments, apart from either like having sort of like similar boy crazy mindset like Serena does in one episode, or when she does a big smiley face when she was dancing in the ballroom. And her apart from the eyes, the smile definitely reminded me of a Charlie Brown smile. Yep, it was like that. As far as side characters are concerned, you have the cats, Luna and Artemis. They pretty much guide the girls that are with yellow hair. So Serena and Mina. Luna is pretty much like a British one that's either black or purple. And she kind of gets irritated by Serena when she doesn't do things right. But when she does something right, she's happy for her, as expected. Artemis is a white cat that can either have moments where you can take him seriously, or he can be kind of a goofy character when he does something stupid, like when he
anime character.
Yeah, like when he reveals that he's center control when revealing himself to be Gamer Artemis. Like he had a headset on, and when he was first shown, he was doing like this like shocked face. Then it made me think, oh my god, Artemis is a gamer! Gamers rise up! Oh, god damn it. Oh, that was so funny.
That's the typical stupid references that we find.
Okay, keep your composure, everybody. By everybody, I mean you and me specifically, since we're only one that's so far. Other side characters, you have Serena's friend, or two friends. One of them's, apart from the scouts, you have Molly, who's pretty much got a Boston accent, or is it New Jersey? But she's like the one that goes, well, what's wrong, Serena? You definitely seem pretty down. She's kind of like, her character I thought was going to be annoying at first, but she's an alright background character, or a side character. Definitely you're more interested in like the main characters. She got less attention as the other scouts were introduced, but her stuff was alright, although I will say that her obsession over Maxfield Stanton was kind of no, because he was a villain, but more so she's obsessed over this rich person, and they try to be together. And she tried to be with him while he was trying to use her to reveal if he was or if she was the Sailor Moon character this entire time. Which Maxwell Stanton's an idiot because she's blonde. Molly isn't blonde. She has brown hair.
Wait, is this like some reference to Hitler?
Maybe.
No, I'm kidding.
If this was Obama speaking, he'd be like, maybe. I don't know, like in that trailer for when we did for February, when he was talking about Samurai, War for Cybertron, the video game, Deadpool, and Sonic. But,
Yeah.
but moving on. Other side characters, you have Serena's parents, who are pretty much, the typical anime appearance of a main protagonist in somewhat toy-driven series or merchandise-driven series. Like, you have the mother, who's pretty much like, oh, you gotta do your chores and you get good grades, and you have your father, who's pretty much like a typical anime dad of sorts.
Yeah.
You also have her brother Sammy, who's kind of your typical younger brother that's kind of rebellious and whatnot. Although there was one moment where he's pretty much like willing to uh, like not be somewhat of a twerp uh, with his older sister in one episode, which was fine. Although he went back to his normal rebellious behavior a few episodes later. And other side characters, we already mentioned the villains, so we won't go through that too much. They're okay. They definitely are not as developed. But last side character I can think of, well, two, actually three in this instance. Melvin, who's pretty much the main dork. He's a main super nerd. He has swirly glasses, and he's like, nobody can stop me as long as there's life on the internet. Look out! Yeah, he speaks for himself, but he was funny to watch at times. Then you also have um, Grandpa Hino, who is Ray's grandpa, and he's pretty much got that sort of mindset of being uh, uh, he's definitely not like that guy from Dragon Ball Z Master Roshi. That's his name. I can't believe I know his name, but not the series itself.
Sorry, I'm back. My dog was crying. You know,
Oh,
he has problems to stand up because he's very old.
oh, poor
So
baby.
yeah.
All right, back to the show.
Yep.
And the last side character would be Andrew, who is pretty much like the guy that runs the arcade shop. He's super friendly. Since he's apparently Canadian in the '90s dub or voiced by Canadian, it made me think of Caillou's dad from that one skit from Family Guy where they made fun of Canadians as well as Caillou's beta dad.
Which fucking show doesn't make fun of Canadians in your sitcoms or animated
Well, the thing
show?
is, they didn't mention Canada, or at least I don't think they did in season one of this series. But Andrew, being voiced by a Canadian, definitely sounds like a Canadian would, being too kind and whatnot. He's always like, "Hi, Serena. Oh man, I heard you were down in the dumps today. I'll give you some free tokens for this arcade game." That's literally him at times.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I just realized I forgot about Tuxedo Mask. He's kind of a prick. When he's daring, he's an asshole. He's always like, "Oh,
What
watch
the
where you're
fuck?
going, like watch where you're going, meatball head." But when he's turned into Tuxedo Mask, he's like, "I am Tuxedo Mask. Don't worry, Sailor Moon. I will help you in this fight." And he does like some okayish attacks on his enemies. I think the most dynamic thing about it is when he throws the roses to the ground. But he ain't no Batman. Let's be real here. Like, not that I need him to punch and kick, but it's just kind of funny to see him look like this badass, but he does less than the girls do, which is fine.
kind
Like,
of like kind of like Mr. Satan in Dragon Ball. I don't know if you know that character.
Yep. But then again, like I kind of prefer the girls more than I do Tuxedo Mask because their characters are more interesting. Although I will say, as we'll get into the plot, I did like some parts of his backstory, and that's pretty much all the characters we have for season one, apart from the villains and the monsters of the week, which we'll get to. What about the story? What about like the quality of the animation? It's all right. It's typical anime. Uh,
It's goofy,
it's toy. It
probably.
has goofy moments. It has very genuine moments, very touching moments, sad moments, happy moments. It's what you expect it to be. But in the moments that I do like where where it has great animation, such as the oil painting like look where Serena looks at the fireball that's approaching them in the elevator before she transforms, that's well done.
Cool.
Yeah. And it's actually not like the animation wise is actually pretty good. I mean, it is toy after all, but it makes it I don't know. It makes me want to talk about why kind of prefer older animation than I do newer animation. Because from the clips I've seen of some of the new stuff, or like Crystal, it doesn't feel natural. It kind of looks um, fake. It doesn't feel like there's much soul put into it, especially when I showed you the comparisons between Eternal screen caps and Crystal screen caps.
Yeah.
Now I know this is from a different time period and all, but you get the feeling that there is more like spirit, more of a spirit inside um, the '90s anime because of these characters feeling more soulful. Um, they just feel better animated. They feel more expressive, and like modern cartoons can be a similar thing as well. Like SpongeBob is very animated. Um, Transformers, despite being a CGI show, TF Prime is very well animated. Star Wars: The Clone Wars is CGI, but it's well done. But in terms of hand drawn stuff, you look at stuff like Blackjack or Pokemon or Chowder or anything that Disney did in the
Yeah.
2000s, and they're all done well. But the main reason is because they have talented animators.
hmm Yeah, exactly.
You look at some of the most recent hand drawn animation, and it's kind of lackluster. I know, like excluding the most of the adult cartoons out there because they all look the same. What's one sort of cartoon that sticks out to you that's well done in terms of animation, and include one anime as well?
Yeah, I don't think I don't know if I can think exactly which.
For me, the best examples would probably be like regular show. I mean, sure, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I think it's got great character animation overall because it knows how to animate their characters and make them feel like they're more than just drawings, but they're also like giving the feeling of having soul in them. And as for
Yeah.
anime, well, a lot of anime just seems too like saturated and flat. Nowhere near as like okay, like sure, '90s stuff can be kind of imperfect, but at least you get a feeling that there's more effort put into this stuff. And that's kind of why I prefer the '90s anime because it just feels more soulful. I mean, you could definitely kind of cringe at some of the goofy faces that they would make at times, but at the same time, you might be wowed when they do some great animation. And that's definitely one of the biggest highlights of this anime of Sailor Moon. Although future episodes do have, or future seasons do have better animation, and much like G1, as we mentioned before, you have different animation directors involved. And at least, even if it's inconsistent at times, at least the animation doesn't have any errors per se. You have some oddities every once in a while, but nowhere near as significant as like the animation errors in G1. Then again, more tight like budget control, or not even a budget. Maybe it's just that there was like different pace, and instead of having like balding CEOs demanding schedules be made, animators were more like used to this sort of work. Like it's something I would like to learn about comparing how animation's done in America and how animation's handled in Japan. in terms of the industry, like in terms of studios specifically.
Yeah. Also, the work is distributed very differently.
Yep. Now then, for the voice acting, and I like it. You know, people are probably going to be like, how can you like this? This is very trash. Like the voice, like what's with the voices? Why did you like this for? How dare you choose the name Serena instead of Osagi? First of all, hot take, but I don't really like the name Usagi that much. I know it's based on a Japanese rabbit influence or like a rabbit on the moon, but if you forget that, kind of like I do from time to time, I kind of think the name Usagi sounds like ew soggy. Like ew soggy socks.
Ooh, saggy balls.
No, sussy balls. You got the wrong thing. Obama hamburger sussy balls. This is the second time that's happened in the podcast. Can you believe this?
Not my fault. Well, maybe.
Okay. All right. Let's keep it together now. Yeah. Like the 90s geek stuff tends to get ridiculous by either people that are probably trying to make themselves look like they're too smart or too cool for it, or they think it's like, oh, the subs are better, man. A, not everyone's going to
Mhm.
agree with you on that, and B, like this was made from a time period to try to make it feel more like a cartoon instead of an anime, and it worked quite well because it has an identity of its own. You know how I talk about how Transformers has identity for its voice acting because like 95% of the time you can recognize whose voice belongs to who?
Yeah.
The same
Here
thing can
having
be a
some things. What?
yeah, the same thing applies to Sailor Moon because like Deke when they did the voices, they were more about making it sound like a normal cartoon than it would an anime these days. The closest that we get to that would probably in like recent time would probably Pokemon because they kind of kept the same spirit of the 90s anime while updating it with newer voice casts and
Hmm.
whatnot. I mean, you can recognize the voice of Ash Ketchum with your eyes closed, but can you recognize the voice of any other anime protagonist?
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
The same thing can be said here, because the voice of like okay, first it was Tracy Morta voices Serena, then it was Terry Hawks, but their voices are memorable. Like they're very distinct. I remember listening to her. Her voice is still stuck in my head. Maybe not as to the same extent as like Peter Cullen or Tom Kenny, but like then again, I'm more used to listening to Optimus Prime and SpongeBob. But her voice still stands out. Like I can recognize her when she's talking, when she does silly sounds, when she's crying, when she gets serious, because she has an identity. Whereas most anime voice actors and actresses don't have much of an identity, especially of late when you look at a lot of modern stuff, and it's usually just non-union voice actors that don't really stand out from each other.
Yeah.
And like before anyone asks, yes, you can make non-union stuff work, like Cyberverse. I know, Transformers example again, but like there are non-union voice actors that are involved, but you can still recognize the voices if you listen to them. Like I can recognize Optimus's voice from Megatron's, Bumblebee's from Hot Rod's, because the voice actors they use are distinct from each other. Whereas War for Cybertron Trilogy, yeah, okay, we're done with that. Yeah, it's all about making your character sound distinct. Like I can recognize Serena's voice from Amy's, Ray's from like Lita's, Mina's. I don't remember as much, but I still remember it more than I would someone else from a different anime. Queen Beryl, I can recognize her. Jedi, Nephlite, pretty much everyone's voices I can recognize simply because they know how to choose different voice actors, and more importantly, make sure that they don't sound too similar to each other. which it's not going to go through a lot of people's minds because they're still going to go like, "Oh, subs, man," or they're probably going to choose the Viz dub, which more power to you. Sure, it's more faithful, which honestly I don't really care about being faithful. I mean, you still have a version that's what it is. I mean, but then it starts sounding pretty dull because the voice actors in the Viz dub don't really sound that distinct. And before people started to say like, "Oh, but like, come on, what are you talking about? Those are distinct." Like, well, you criticize the Deke dub. I'm going to criticize the Viz dub for the reasons we would probably want to criticize the Deke dub for. Although, with me, since I'm not a weeb, since I'm not an otaku or whatever, I just select stuff that I like. It's less me saying, like, what are you talking about, dude? This is good. This is like perfection. This is more. Stick with what you have. You unappreciative bastard.
Yeah.
So yeah, 90s voice acting. Yeah, it's kind of cheesy, but it has some spirit and soul overall. I have no other complaints. Besides, I'd rather take like dated yet still kind of fun personalities over stiff voice actors that you'd probably find in cheaper shows.
Yeah, I think that when voices are bad, it's mostly because there is no money in between that work.
Yeah, like Stephanie said, I'm pretty sure people have like her a lot, but her voice is kind of unbearable at times. She sounds like someone you'd find from another anime, and hearing her modern day voice acting in a classic show just sounds odd. It's like
Mm.
if you replace the G1 voice actors with the no, okay, we're done with that.
Dude, just stop.
Okay. All right, next up, music. Yeah, music. Okay. The music for season 1 is actually different from the Japanese version, which is kind of weird, but then again, I think they wanted to make it sound more like your typical Saturday morning cartoon, which again, I get the intention and for the most part it works. The background music is definitely catchy, and especially the theme song. I mean, you get lyrics like "Fighting evil by moonlight, winning love by daylight." That's actually pretty good, you know. It has the same sort of catchiness, the same way like Autobots wage a battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons do, or Who Lives in a Pineapple Under the Sea. You know, it works. I have no complaints about the background music. I mean, I know people are like, "Oh, why can't you stick with the Japanese background music?" Well, good news for you because Cloverway kept the background music intact. So you better be appreciative of that. Oh no, you're going to complain about the recast or the different voices. Although in some cases, I can see why some people would be more upset about um, the voice they gave Serena in seasons 3 and 4. But that's a story for another day. Again, but
Yeah.
yeah, instrumentals kind of vary from like the little, I don't know how to say it. It like sort of fantastic, like fantasy like to casual to clumsy. Typical like music you'd find from a 90s cartoon with stories heroes. But it works, you know? It kind of makes it sound more on par with something you'd find from a Sonic cartoon at times, but with the remixes of Moonlight Legend. But I can't
Yeah.
complain. It does a job very well. It has unique music and um, I can listen to some of it. I mean, there's one part where I can't really play it right now, but it kind of sounds like something I'm familiar with from watching 90s VHS tapes. And I guess the last thing we could talk about would probably be uh, the episodes I did like. I liked the pilot fine enough, although it kind of felt a little fast paced because probably because they sped it up a bit. I liked the episode that involved the debut of Amy. I liked seeing the first three scouts, Moon, Mercury, and Mars, go on a cruise ship to fight off one of the monsters. I like seeing the episode where Nephlite dies trying to save Molly from some of the assassins of the Negaverse. I like seeing the episode at Jupiter debut. I like seeing the episode where Amy has someone equally as smart as she is, but he turns out to have been under the influence of one of the monsters that had a rainbow crystal. And I especially love the episode where, or like the two episodes where it turns out that Serena is the Moon Princess, and of course, now they have a mission to rescue Darien. Those got 5 out of 5s from me. The one episode, or the two episodes that I got low rankings from me, are Slim City, and the one where Serena and Ray argue with each other at times in an attempt to try and fool the monsters and or the Negaverse and thinking that they're splitting up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, quite a lot to say. So, long story short, for Slim City, I hate it because it felt like filler that didn't really add much, and it was pretty lousy how they kept on treating Serena like crap. Because, like, she shouldn't feel bad about having gained a pound. She still looks skinny. And I know she's kind of obsessed with making herself look perfect and all, but like, has he seen like what a real life person looks like? Hopefully not, because she probably vomits at a real life person.
Nope.
And in one episode where they pretend to split up, the kind of pettiness with the arguments between the scouts was pretty between Serena and Ray was pretty unbearable. I thought that the behavior that I thought that Ray would pretty much like won't want to have any more beef with Serena, especially when they try to rescue Darien, aka Tuxedo Mask. But they kept on having that same sort of beef that they had just for the sake of this episode, which was kind of petty because you thought she'd be less, or Ray would be less wanting to have some beef with Serena, but okay. But the one thing that kind of upset me more is that, like, Serena didn't have her moon wand. Ray had it with her, but the reason behind it was because she said, "Oh, like Serena left it in the room." When it felt more like what she should have said was, like, "Okay, I admit I wanted to be leader this whole time, but I'm sorry, I didn't have much faith in her. I shouldn't have been like this again." Just seems out of character for that to be the case with the Moon One explanation that they actually had in the show, don't you think?
Yeah.
But I think what disappointed me more was the finale because, all right, in Japan, the finale was split up in two episodes. One where Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Venus get killed. Don't worry, they come back. And one where Moon goes up against Queen Beryl and Malachite and whatnot, as well as uh, Tuxedo Mask when he's Endymion, an evil version of him, which he has been for the last 10 episodes of season 1. That itself would be perfectly fine, but they cramped up the last 2 episodes of season 1 from Japan into one episode, and it doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like too much is happening in one episode. It's the pacing of it just doesn't work overall because they put in all this stuff within 22 minutes, and I think the one problem I have is that sometimes the pacing of episodes can either be a little sluggish or a little too fast. Not as bad as some other examples I've seen in terms of anime, but it kind of gets a little like inconsistent at times. But I think it's worse when it gets rushed. Like the last episode, Day of Destiny begins with the scouts getting killed, aside from Sailor Moon. Then she goes to the monster, to like Queen Beryl as well as Endymion. They fight for a bit, but then Sailor Moon's like, "Hey, remember yourself. Remember yourself as Darien or Prince Darien." But Darien dies at one point. Then Beryl dies before escaping with the energy of the Negaverse or the Negaforce. And then, like, the Princess Serenity shows up, and she's joined by the spirits of the other scouts as they disintegrate Queen Beryl with the last of their power before things are reset. And apparently, in Japan, even Serena dies, like, having used up all her energy, but they all get revived with no traces of their past lives until it's used for, like, an emergency situation if evil returns.
New plot.
Yep, for season 2, which we'll review in a few months. But That stuff would be good if it wasn't cramped into one episode. It's kind of like when I talked about how Beast Morpher's finale was rushed. Or did I say Beast Morpher's finale was rushed, or am I misremembering?
Think so.
But like in the Beast Morpher's finale, you pretty much had like after it was revealed in the previous episode where uh like friggin' uh Evox was Venjix the whole time. He pretty much went up against, or the Rangers went up against him with like weapons from the past teams. Then Steel tries to go up against him by trying to stab the friggin' antivirus arrow onto him, but he dies. The Rangers say, "Oh, like we're going to avenge him," but for a brief moment, there's not much time to mourn for him. Then there's a very short Megazord fight that lasts like 2 minutes, and they just win simply by stabbing him and putting in the human DNA into the machine, who dies. Then Steel comes back to life, and he's a human now.
Weird.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad if it was better paced. And that's the problem with Neo Saban era Power Rangers, is that they rushed their finale so badly. Apart from Samurai, everything just felt like they just wanted to make it one and done and just move on with the next season. That's not what you're supposed to do.
Hmm.
And that's the same
Yeah.
feeling I got with Day of Destiny. And like I even told some friends, I remember posting this on Twitter by saying this was a great moment to see, but it should have been like a TV movie. Think of it this way: like when American TV stations air the series varies. Apparently, some people were watching the show on 5 a.m. in the 90s. I am not making that up.
No, I trust you.
Yeah, like a Saturday morning, like 8 a.m. or 9 p.m. would make like 9 a.m. would make sense, or hell, nighttime because Sailor Moon, the moon's out. Like, why not watch something that's themed after like the current time, like the moon, like not times in year, but more so like the current hours. And that's what I sort of do sometimes. Sometimes I watch this show at night because it kind of reminds me of watching cartoons as a kid back then before going to sleep. And hell, I'd say that this show kind of feels like something I used to watch back then, like 90s cartoons, like The Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and yeah, a lot of other examples because 90s.
There are plenty.
Yep. So maybe to win people over with the ratings, why not like put the 2 episodes into a TV movie and have it be like this awesome event? That could have been great to do instead of just making Day of Destiny, which feels super rushed. And yeah, it's pretty much my biggest complaint about season one. Not the voice acting, not the music, but the last episode. Ay, 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 it's quite a bit, isn't it? But that being said, I enjoyed watching this show. You know, Sailor Moon may not be on the same level of like interest that I have with something like Transformers, Power Rangers, comics, Star Wars, and video games like Mario and Halo. But that doesn't mean that like the character or the series will never ever be in the same sort of interest that those have. I've enjoyed watching this series. It surprised me, and in a way, kind of saved me from the shit show that was 2020. I mean, we already know about how fucked up that was from a variety of reasons, but in a way, like this series saved me from the sort of depression that was going on. And it even made 2021 feel a little more enjoyable because I felt like I was learning something new, the same way I learned about TF Wiki and Ranger stuff and whatnot. It just felt more, made me feel less miserable about life, and it was a breath of fresh air amongst my other interests. So it definitely, like, in a way, kind of did more and saved me from depression more than Beast Morphers did with its returning stuff. More than more than that stupid. Okay, I'm saying the name of the show again, aren't I? The stupid Netflix Transformer show again. Moving on from that, and dare I say it, it probably saved me from like depression more than Zack Snyder's Justice League did, weirdly enough. Okay, hold on there, fellow Snyder fans, or so-called cultists, according to the stupid verifieds. I'm not using the term Snyder cultist insultingly. I'm just like, hold your horses, people. But like, main point is that series, like that film's, that definitely made me feel very happy that it came out. But I already knew I was going to like it when I saw the trailers, especially after how shitty the theatrical cut of Justice was. Whereas with Sailor Moon, it felt like a surprising thing to like. At first, I didn't think I was going to like it when I saw the clips from the now defunct SMS channel, which kind of like surprised me because there was one clip that I saw back then, which was like the meatball head won't shut up, and the voice of Serena that was annoying, cringy. But when I saw the full episodes, like more clips, I was like, oh, I wonder what this is like in a full episode. I might watch it one day. Then I see the full episodes online, and I thought, you know what, this is actually pretty good. I'm quite happy with how it turned out.
Yeah. Just to defend you, I think that maybe because we spend more time with shows, that they are able to maybe give us more emotions and have more affection for it than a movie. And even though the Snyder Cut is fantastic and a freaking masterpiece, maybe like it doesn't give us the time that any other TV show would, you know?
Yeah. Especially, like I said, like we already knew we would love the Snyder Cut going in.
Yeah.
So, just as like one last thing before we wrap this up, this series is pretty fun to watch, but more importantly, I have to give thanks to the likes of Sailor Moon Says, as well as people like Lunar Archivist, Switchpoint, and a lot of friends I've met in Discord servers that are themed after the show. Thank you for helping contributing towards making me feel like a bigger fan of the series, especially the more I see the show. But I also want to give special thanks to SMS themselves because their channel is pretty much the main thing that got me into the series. I mean, I know I saw like the vaporwave videos of Mercury and the beach, uh, or Mina blowing kisses, and those vaporwave compilations back in the when the pandemic began. When I was like painting my walls in my bedroom during the lockdown. But
Hmm.
SMS channel definitely got me more and more interested in the series and helped me out with avoiding this sort of like depressing thing that was happening in 2020. So I'm pretty sure they might be busy right now. I'm pretty sure they might have their YouTube channel defunct with no other access to making a new one. But if you're watching this, thank you so much for helping me feel better about life at that time period.
It's nice.
And from here, we're going to go into Free Guy, which, holy crap, an hour and 30 minutes. Well, Free Guy itself, since I don't think you've seen Free Guy, I'm gonna let you ask us or ask me the questions about the movie itself.
Okay. Question. Did you like the idea of the movie?
At first, part of me thought it was gonna be kind of like been there, done that, but actually, no, not really. It turns out not to be the case. It's
Cool.
it's definitely more like it definitely has a sort of humor that you might expect people to kind of laugh at, but not constantly. But it's it excels in ways that make it seem more than just a one note pony.
Nice. So it is actually surprising. That's what you're saying. It doesn't end up doing what you would predict it would.
Yep.
Kind of
But
like that.
yeah, but more importantly, like even if it has the typical tropes of say Ryan Reynolds being the main star, it actually manages to be more engaging than I thought.
Emotionally engaging.
Yeah, emotionally engaging. Like whether it's from like the touching moments or from stuff like when you have kind of more exciting moments too.
Cool.
Yep. Additionally, one thing that I always appreciated about the film was that it actually didn't like it knew for a fact it was going to have a lot to make it stand out from all the other films made at the time. So, for example, in the commercials, it pretty much says that it's in a world full of sequels, reboots, prequels, and whatnot. One man has to be unique, and it's kind of like a parody of typical video games out there, kind of like Grand Theft Auto and whatnot, because this world is set in a video game.
Yeah. So it's a bit self aware, the movie.
Yeah, and it
Oh,
especially proves itself when it like does the when it brought in one character which you might recognize being Dude. I think his name was Dude, but one thing that was funny was when he called himself, or his catchphrase was catchphrase.
okay. I'm kind of getting the idea of the movie now.
Yep. And apart from Ryan Reynolds, the rest of the cast is actually um, pretty fun. But first, like the story itself is, it might seem a little basic at first. It's kind of like your typical like mindset of an open world video game with a parody of life and what life itself, and whatnot. And it's pretty much meant to sort of give you the mindset that everything's going to be scripted and so on and so forth with the source code, especially with Guy, who in a way kind of reminds me of Lego Movie's Emmett, but instead of Chris Pratt,
Ah,
it's Ryan Reynolds, and coincidentally, they're both involved with Marvel, obviously.
yeah. Yeah.
But
So the protagonist is likable.
yeah, he's your typical like been there, done that role. Is like everything's going well, but then life happens, or life or fate happens, and he goes into big adventure. But at least he manages to refresh himself in the setting. Like at least seen these tropes before, but the way they can make him stand out is like with Lego Movie, where um, the imagination of the kid helps be the script of the story itself in a way, whereas um, with Guy, who is pretty much an NPC, um, is at first unaware that he's in a video game, kind of like how in the Matrix, our protagonist is pretty much unaware that he is in some sort of simulation or in the Matrix itself.
Yeah,
Neo.
I heard looks like a video game Truman Show.
Yep. I didn't expect people to actually bring that up, but I expected more people to make comparisons to like Grand Theft Auto and Ready Player One, especially RPO, because my God, does that movie get a lot of attention for its Easter eggs? But here, it's very much original. Sure,
Cool.
it's inspired by all the stuff, but at least it manages to have its own footing. And
Yeah.
it's not until he grabs a pair of sunglasses where he starts to see how different Free City is. And now he pretty much thinks he's or someone thinks that he's Blue Shirt Guy and not an NPC, and that pretty much makes him like be a standout amongst the rest of the world because he's going against the source code in a way, which is kind of fun and when you consider the fact that everything is kind of like seen as a video game and not just your evil corporation one. I mean, you can say it's evil, but not to the same extent as Matrix.
Yeah.
Next question.
Um, well, do you think it will become a memorable movie of sorts?
Well, maybe not. Like maybe not to the same extent as a movie like Uncut Gems would in terms of modern masterpiece. But
Hmm.
I'd say the
But
more you give it attention, the more it becomes memorable. I think we're so used to like being like expecting like a movie based on a pre-existing franchise to be good or to get all the attention. We've been so used to Cape shit and Star Wars and other IPs getting all the attention, where new ideas just get drowned out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks balls. But I think two examples of films that would probably stand out immensely would be Uncut Gems and Free Guy. They're very different in their own rights. Uncut Gems is a very tense film that's about it has a protagonist that even though he's kind of an ass, at least you still want to root for him because he's going up against worse fish in the lake.
Yeah.
And with Free Guy, like it's a very loving parody to video games and knows how to sort of poke fun of the way things are played out and even um, make its cast shine. I mean, like Ryan Reynolds definitely gets oversaturated in the market, but at least here he manages to be quite enjoyable overall. He pretty much, well, I don't want to say he speaks for himself in this role, but whether he's Guy, the main character, or Dude, who is pretty much your incomplete character, um, you get the feeling that everything is just like it's just them having fun with what they're doing. It feels like a passion project that develops into a movie with no compromises.
Hmm. To
Yeah,
be honest, it sounds better than I expected.
yeah, it's not basic. It's definitely fun to watch, and I have no complaints about the way it's done up overall. I mean, you could probably say, "Oh, it's unoriginal to some extent," but at the same time, like I can't really find that much to hate about it because it manages to make up for what you would probably call our complaints with fun moments as well as a nice cast too.
Hmm.
Next one,
Sorry.
next question.
Next question. Um, what about? Well, you already talked about the characters, a bit of the concept, a bit of maybe the reception it may have. What do you think about the music, for example? Does it have something
Music
to
was all
worth
right.
that is worth listening later?
I think the music itself is all right. I mean, like
Ah,
obviously, I already mentioned the fact that it uses that's fairly original, but then I remember, no, wait a second, Star Wars and Avengers themes were in there. But I guess I can't really complain too much because it sees itself as a parody, and it kind of makes fun of the fact that those two are the two themes you'd probably expect to hear the most.
yeah.
Yeah. Although it is kind of a disturbing reminder that this is a movie that's released by 20th Century Studios, which is owned by the Walt Disney Company.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, at least I wasn't able to think about that too much because I think at this point we already know the fact that the merger's already happened. It can't be done. But in this case, at least they're willing to not be petty with Fox's movies and let them go as planned. No credit taken, no stuff pushed back, well apart from the Marvel stuff, but that's a different story.
Another question I do have in
Yep.
your top of this year's movies, where would you put Free Guy?
Um. Well, good question. Because while everyone else has pretty much been hyping up all these movies out there, there's only been a few that I've seen in full that are released in this year. Um, Zack Snyder's Justice League, as well as Army of the Dead, Sailor Moon Eternal, and Free Guy, obviously.
Hmm.
But like, I've been kind of like hesitant to check out any other films unless it would probably be something like Venom 2, obviously, or um, I'd probably give Shang-Chi a watch. We'll see. Like, between the fact that some movies have been pushed back and whatnot, and there was one movie that starred Hugh Jackman that I wanted to see, and that was on HBO Max, but I don't want to. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to make an HBO Max account just for that, especially since Warner Brothers still sucks.
Yeah.
but I guess it's not much competition if we're being real here. But definitely is higher up there. I mean, it might not be one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time because there have been so many other films that have been in my mind for so long that are stuck with me. But at least here with Free Guy, it does at least kind of give me some hope that more original movies get some attention because there's some IPs I love, but at the same time you got to give some attention to new stuff, especially if it's something
Hmm.
that's actually worth getting attention to, like Free Guy, and not garbage like Cuties.
What does Netflix have to do with this?
Well, there's just a reminder that that's the kind of shit I would not support, and
No,
neither
but
should you.
I don't think pedophilia is something of a new, like, it's not a new concept, or
Okay,
yeah.
this is getting weird and weirder, but yeah, main idea is that like support movies like Free Guy, not Cuties. All
Yeah,
right,
I agree.
next question.
Well, um, final question would be, yeah, we're talking about blockbusters, and you're saying that this movie has something new to bring to, like, the whole environment of blockbusters. But, like, what would you say that is exactly the thing that makes that movie so distinct beside the idea? Is it executed in a way that it's wow, or maybe falls short?
I think what makes it work the most is the fact that it actually manages to be pretty like self-aware of itself, but in a way that doesn't seem like it's running out of ideas.
Hmm.
More specifically, the main thing about it is the fact that it has, yeah, like I said, it feels like a passion project. It feels like a tribute, a parody, but it's not cringe. It's not unfunny. It's actually got a lot of genuine things going on. And while you could say it might be like this decade's take on the Lego movie idea, at least it manages to be original instead of it trying to copy the same character tropes and whatnot. I wouldn't want a sequel per se, but I do want people to learn that this is how you would make a parody.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. Besides, I don't want to have like a Free Guy 2 that's just as dull as the Lego Movie 2.
Oh, I haven't watched the Lego Movie 2, but I thought that it would be boring, to be honest, because I didn't like the trailers.
Yeah, I think I'd be just happy not watching Lego Movie 2 either. But
Oh,
Free Guy is good. And
okay,
finally,
I'll check it.
we're taking a look at Batman 1966, the classic Adam West TV series, and a bit of the movie too.
Wait, there's a movie?
Yeah, there was a movie that was released around the same time as the TV show came out, which is kind of crazy, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now, I think we already know for a fact that Batman is one of the best characters out there, and one of our biggest interests too. I mean, we've seen it in a lot of comic books, a lot of cartoons, and movies. I mean, my top four include Keaton, Bale, Affleck, with him being number one, and like I'd even put Adam West in there. Not many people probably put him in there because they think he's too goofy, but I like Adam West. Spoiler alert.
He, he was a cool guy.
Yeah, I'd probably say I like him more than I do Christopher Reeve, but well, more on that in a bit.
I mean, Christopher Reeve's Superman may have not been great, but I like the dude too. He wasn't a bad
Yeah,
person. He was actually
and I think it's
pretty
mostly.
chill.
I think it's not like the. That's not like the character. I think it's more like me not liking the character, but the actor I think was very genuine, and
Yeah.
I especially liked Reeves' commentary on how the studio was not like doing his ideas justice, especially when they
Mm.
made him so clumsy or they didn't evolve his character. Warner Brothers is still doing it.
Yeah. A century after.
Yep. They have not learned a bit. I mean, we've already seen how Superman's films devolved in quality more than they already have. And we've seen what happens when they try to listen to the modern day nerds instead of trying to let the director do their vision with the Snyder stuff.
Yeah.
But Batman, classic Batman, he's fun. I think we already used to like the darker tones, but Adam West Batman is just great to watch.
Yeah. I mean, where do you remember him from? Because I was pretty sure my dad was a big fan when he was young, and then he showed me a couple of episodes, and yeah, it was silly.
Back then, for me, like I remember seeing stuff like the like the cartoons, both the '90s and 2000s, like Cartoon Network or whatever was Kids WB or CW for Kids or the WB or whatever. And around those times, like I think, like when Batman Begins was being like coming out at the time, I think they were putting a huge push on re-releasing Batman media. So they were like, okay, we have new stuff out there. Let's also give something for older fans too. And they put out Adam West Batman, and I love seeing it as a kid as much as I did the cartoons because I was under the mindset that Batman could be different in terms of different media. You can have him be serious in the cartoons and in the movies, while in some shows he can be kind of like comical, but it still works.
Yeah, not in Batman and Robin, but it still works.
Yeah, take that, Warner Brothers 1987, and someone whose name won't be mentioned. But yeah, Adam West Batman. The reason why the comedy worked was because it wasn't trying to belittle audience members, nor was it trying to like appeal towards the wrong market. Instead, the main idea was just, hey, let's make this series work. The Silver Age was definitely a specific time period, but it made sense.
Yeah. And like the villains were ridiculous, but they were ridiculous in the good way. Like
it felt natural.
You saw the Joker, and he worked. I don't know how or why, because you watch it out of context and you say, yeah, this is a piece of shit. But then you watch the actual episode, and inside of that uh, like construct, it fucking works.
It's natural too. Like it just like much like how it wouldn't make sense to turn Batfleck from how he was in BVS to like a shitty dad joke guy in Justice. It wouldn't make sense for Adam West Batman to go from the Light Knight to the Dark Knight. It just doesn't fit his role. I mean, the voice you can probably change up a bit in some animation, but the character, it just wouldn't work that well for him. Which is why the lighter tone makes sense because he was intended to be light.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a response to anything that was going that like they do nowadays. Like that was how he was built up from the scratch. He was built from the scratch up, or built from scratch. They didn't retool any previous concepts or try to like brush away something that got negatively received. They just made something new, and it worked out very well.
As a way of introducing Batman to the mainstream, yeah.
And
it was there.
Yeah, especially with like the theme song, like Batman, Batman, Batman. It's catchy, and it feels like it's part of his history. Even the intro itself is pretty awesome too, with the actually not too shabby animation to the mix. And okay, yeah, sure, the characters are cooler than they do in live action, but in a way, I don't know. Adam West and Burt Ward still look kind of awesome in their outfits. Maybe it's just me thinking of them as like veteran soldiers that you have to give a lot of respect to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thinking about it, I think that's kind of why I have respect for Adam West and Burt Ward, because their Batman and Robins definitely feel like veterans of the past that pass on the torch towards a new generation.
Yeah.
Lucas, come on, buddy. You've seen some Batman before, right?
He probably sat down once.
Yeah, because every once in a while we watch a show on MeTV in the U.S. at least.
Uh,
I don't know what channel it airs in your country, but maybe you can fill us in on that.
no, we had other schedules,
Oh, all right, but
but yeah, to be clear, I think that it had some very memeable and uh, unforgettable jokes. The Adam West Batman show. It was just too funny at times.
the bomb, the shark with the bat spray, the shark spray, um, the way the characters talk. Holy inserts word Batman, as well as to the Batcave and whatnot. It's all like it feels like it's like cheesy, but they knew it was meant to be cheesy because they designed it to be cheesy from the ground up.
Hmm.
It doesn't clash with any pre-existing media. It's its own thing. It's its own world, and that's why the '60s Batman works compared to a lot of recent media from DC, especially in the movie side of things, because they're trying to like go for minimum effort and be cheap.
Oops.
Yep, oops, in terms of Warner Brothers mistakes. But
Yeah, I mean, one time we should just sit down and make a list of all the shitty actions that Warner Brothers has done in history
yeah, that'd be
related to DC. Because if it is about every movie, then it will probably be infinite.
yeah, indeed. Plus, not all their actions affected like the films. It's just some got affected, others didn't somehow. But thankfully, Batman 1966 wasn't affected. I think that was back then when Warner Brothers wasn't the owner of DC. It's kind of hard to remember all of it exactly, but I do know for a fact that it ran on Fox channels or it was distributed by Fox.
Okay.
Yeah. See,
At times.
that was back then when DC was like still growing as a company, kind of like Marvel was before it was bought out by Warner Brothers. It was pretty much like it's sort of a more dependent company in a way, where it needed to work with other prop or companies to release a product.
Yeah.
Thankfully, uh, even in spite of the way people, even in spite of like the sort of messy rights thing, Batman is still like this TV show is still under Warner Brothers, which is cool because it's with everything else, but not so cool is the fact that Disney, since they own Fox, would own a bit of Batman history. But what kind of history? Hell if I know, because these rights issues are confusing. They're more confusing than other rights, and I don't want to go into that topic too far because it'd be kind of disturbing.
Hmm.
But yeah, like this show is pretty fun to watch. I mean, there's so many episodes to go through, but I'd say there's plenty of like great moments in it. Like I remember when Batman and Robin were surfing at one point before they got captured by the Joker.
Yeah.
Who can forget when Batman was like doing a phone call with Bruce Wayne while trying to change his voice somewhat? Like you can tell his voice would change because I mean, when he's Batman, he has a very specific personality to him. A superhero personality from the '60s.
And we
Whereas,
shouldn't forget that it wasn't a bad show. It actually got nominated for some awards.
yeah, because here's the thing: they put in a lot of effort into the series. Sure, it might seem unimpressive if you're like either someone that prefers the more serious stuff, or if you're like a new fan. Like as you see on Twitter, they might be like, "Oh, LG bestie, like I wish these actors would be back," without even doing hashtag restore to Snyderverse. I mean, come on,
Mm.
you want them back?
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
what you gotta do. Or they'd probably just be like the Suicide Squad stands or the Batman stands, or the Hamada stands. But the 60s Batman is awesome. I don't want to say in his own right because it kind of does him a disservice. But he's awesome in ways like you would say Keaton Batman and Bale Batman and Affleck Batman are awesome. Because they have identity, they are well put together, and more importantly, they're great stories to watch for these characters.
Yeah.
Like, you can definitely watch Keaton Batman for a time period when DC was trying to get like more interesting projects into the mix. Bale's Batman for a more graphic novel take. Affleck's Batman for a deconstruction of his character and interacting with other superheroes too. Whereas with Adam West Batman, he's great to watch on Saturday evenings after a long day of work and whatnot, and enjoying 2 episodes per weekend on MeTV for recent memories.
So yeah, I don't think if that there is much more to talk because it is a classic and someone has at least an idea of it. But if you want to have a good Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, you can watch Batman 1966 and just have a great time.
And more importantly, like if you can find a movie free on YouTube, which I did at one point, then you should definitely watch it. It's great, and it's more than just like there for the bat shark, like the shark repellent, and the you can't get rid of a bomb memes. So that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. What a long one again. Not as long as last time, but yeah. It was great to revisit 3 pieces of old media, one from the 60s, one from the 80s, one from the 90s, and one new film. So in a way, it'd be kind of funny to see Guy look at 66 Batman, animated Sailor Moon, and G1 Rodimus Prime and be like, hey guys, I'm the new guy. I'm named Guy. I can't wait to be this podcast with you all. But that does it for today. The next episode is going to be shorter because we'll go with 3 subject matters. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. Take care.
Wait! Don't forget to subscribe. If you do, I'll give you a headbutt. That's ogre for thank you.